Okay, been a while since we've done any live coding, and basically what I'm going to do is try to write some code. I've never been too good at this when I'm recording, but I think it's fun. It helps me kind of talk through issues and think about things. So let's give it a try, and let's get to work. So what I want to do first, as I mentioned in a video I just recorded, is I want to get rid of the storing the keys for now, at least in the provider table. Since we already have it in our Fuse config package, we're basically just stealing it from there and storing it. And then if you change it there, it's not going to get updated in the table. And This is just an evolution that I didn't go back and really correct. If we ever do have keys, we'll probably have them in their own keys table. Now, why would you want multiple keys? Well, if you had Fuse installed in a database and you were granting rights to other users in the database to use Fuse, they wouldn't need to see the key, but maybe you'd want to use different keys for different groups potentially. So there's a possibility that at some point we should support multiple keys for a model, but then you get into how do I grant rights on this key to these users. Some of that could maybe be done with Oracle through, I forgot the name of the views that basically we can restrict what's available based on the view on the user. So we might do some of that. There's a lot of ways that problem can be tackled, but nobody's asking for it, so not something we need to do today. So let's get rid of provider API key. So I'm going to go ahead and just Control X that. And you can see this table is rebuilt each time we install. So we don't need to have any kind of alter table at this point. So we're just going to drop the table. Now I know Oracle now supports create table if not exists. So we could switch to that because almost everything I'm doing here is going to be a autonomous database, and but I'm not ready to do that just because this works and it's not that complicated, and it does support older databases. So which I want to do. So we're not going to go to that yet. So now we're going to go ahead and just get rid of these calls here. We'll highlight those and hit delete. And they're not all the same length, so at this point we need to do those manually. And this simplifies this call, right? This makes that easier. We need to get rid of that. Save that. So we got rid of it there. Now we need to go into our code and find it and replace. So let's look for API key. And this is where we're referencing the global object, which basically anytime you start to work with a session or specify a session, it's going to set these header variables up here. So this provider, the provider, the model, and the session. So we have access to that, and it should always be current. And that prevents us from having to set that all the time in every procedure and pass it around. It's kind of, you got to be careful because it is a global, and if you switch sessions somehow, if you make a system call, say, to one session and then you switch to another session, then you can run into issues if you're not careful. But hopefully I've caught all those ideas, all those issues. So now, so we're getting our API key and we're doing this in the make API request. So the issue becomes we need to know which API key. The advantage of having it in a table is once we set the provider, we can just get the API key. The disadvantage, yeah, I don't know if I like this at all. The disadvantage is that I have to if then else basically the provider name and get the key here. And we don't really want to do that. It's ugly, but it will work. Okay, it's ugly. Let's just hack this right here. So we're just going to say, and then we can do a case. Should we do a case or we do if? Um, we could do a current provider key. Let's just do fuse. Let's do this. So when we set gprovider, let's go ahead and set gprovider API key, and that is going to be, we're just going to do varchar 2 512. We don't do default null here. So let's call this gprovider API key, and then when we do set session right here, we will do if fuse.g provider dot. Now there is a better. It already figured this out. Provider name equals Anthropic, then G provider API key equals G. No, it's not that though. It's just use config dot Anthropic API key. Yep. It's going to be else if. Is that how you do else if in provider name open API? Then fuse G provider key equals fuse open API else if provider name equals together, then fuse G provider fuse together API key. Else, and so let's just that should never happen, right? So let's just do raise application error. Provider key not found, and we're going to put this in set session so we know where it's coming from. Of course, it would probably tell us, but we'll just do a dash there. Okay, G provider name. Okay, so this is the ugly version, and I can never remember if it's this or that. I think that's it. So this could be refactored, this could be made prettier, but I think this will work. So every time we set session, we're always setting our provider key, and then we can just refer to this everywhere where we had API key. So let's go back here, and everywhere where we're looking at fuse gprovider API, we're just going to change all of those to fuse gprovider API, G underscore provider underscore API underscore key. Replace that. Now, save it, and will this compile? So we're going to go back here to install Fuse, and let's run the schema first and see if we get any issues. We should be able to run this multiple times. Should not cause any errors. A little slow. Let's run it again. Sometimes I run them twice just to see if sometimes when you run things twice, you get an error the second time. Okay, and let's compile that, and let's compile that. Wow, that compiled. Okay, so let's run our tests now. We'll go to our unit test here, and let's test all of the providers. So we'll say where model name is not equal to, and let's add an X, which will be everything. Let's run that. No, let's run the whole block. Let me see. Oh, what did I do? Or model name. What did I do? Let me undo that. Declares. Oh, sometimes I hit F save, FS, and it puts an S there. Okay, not equal. And since that's an actual one, we want to not equal something unactual. We're going to run that. And that's going to loop through all of the models and make a simple call. And basically tests our API key, tests all the models. If DBMS output is connected, we'll get some output here in a second. So super basic unit test, just try to use each model and make a call. Okay, so I don't see any errors here. It would have raised an error if something didn't work. And okay, so I think that works. We've got a bunch of tables here. We can look at things if we wanted to see. If we wanted to see the session prompt responses. This is in reverse order. Let me just. So these are calls we just made, and you can see where's the session ID. That will be tied to the model in the session table. We can see how many tokens each one used, how many elapsed seconds. That's the kind of data that is also Fuse is going to be useful for in a corporate environment because you're going to be able to kind of track and collect stats and usage totals on this, and that's all built in to Fuse because we have tables like this stat table, which stores all kinds of stats, and creating. If I wanted to collect these as stats, all I have to do is create a view called stat underscore underscore, and you can see when you install Fuse, you get these views, a bunch of these views already, and you can kind of look at this any of these examples of how to create these views, and you basically start storing stats. Now the cool thing about the stat table, it's one line per statistic. So only got one line, and it collects data and keeps track of a lot of good information, and even keeps track of history in that table. I'll just give you a peek at this table. Where is it? Stat. Oh, this is views. So let's get a peek at the stat table here. Okay, so lots of columns. The idea here is let's feel good about creating stats. Like I'm not going to worry about how much data it is. I can collect the more. If I'm worried about millions and millions of rows, I kind of go like, oh, should I be collecting this data? If it's one row per stat, I really don't worry about it. I don't mind having millions of rows, right? Because that's millions of stats. And so I need to document everything that's there. I kind of know what it is, but and some of them are useful and some of them aren't so useful. A lot of this is a lot of the times I'm testing things, and I'm not afraid to change things. So, but what we have is we have like the average. This would be your average value for January through December, so you can see really quickly. You can say, show me everything where it's currently April, where April is greater than, March, or April greater than, or January, and then sort by the biggest difference in those numbers. Super easy to do. It keeps a reference for like what's baseline, what's normal. These are, and it doesn't just do 24 hours. Like it just does it with like certain hours or something like that. I forgot how it works. So these would be your references, and then you have your hourly values here. You have your weekly average days. So these are like, and then you've got these rolling ones where it's like a comma delimited string of the stat value of the last like 24, whatever you want, stat values. So, and the same thing with the percent of reference. I'm probably going to change this to using percentiles because I've changed in the SQL log table. I've changed to using p-tiles, and they're actually really useful. I saw that they were used years ago with some of the newer Prometheus kind of monitoring and things like this, and but they really are useful for seeing your outliers. So we're probably going to switch to using p-tiles. I used to have some really cool data here. It's just less and less useful. The p tiles are what I'm alerting on for the most part. Like I think one of the default SQL alerts says, give me anything over like 20 minutes, and you can set that. And also like, it's like every SQL ID where the SQL's matching force matching signature is over, say, 20 minutes. Because if you've got you could have a lot of SQL IDs that are 1 minute each, but they're really all the same SQL. And so you really care about it because if you add it up, say it's more than 20 minutes out of the hour, right? So we look at this FMS elapsed seconds, which is what is the elapsed seconds for all the queries that match this for the hour that match this force matching signature. But we can say, so for everything over 20 minutes, show me show me sequels where in the last, say, 4 hours, there's a count of 3 rows where the elapsed seconds p tile is, in the 90th percentile. And it does a really good job of pulling that stuff out super easy. And that is just an alert view. So I'm not doing so much coding here, I'm really just talking about all you get with views. So that is an alert view. Let me go back to views. So we have this alert view, like long, what is it? I don't think I have the current version in here. So yeah, I don't. But it's one of these alert views, which is just a view that is alert underbar underbar. So you create a view called alert underbar underbar, and you just follow some rules in creating that view. There's a really simple version, which is like one column, it's just value, and then there's a more complicated version, and it'll automatically pick that view up, start monitoring it and running it. And when you have issues, it puts the data in the, you guessed it, alert table. So this is a super basic table. This table does not handle notification. You then write your notification system off of this. And there is a shell script that I run a SQL. I run let me just go show you. In Fuse, in this shell folder, you will find this is kind of what you would run on your Linux or Unix stuff. And a lot of this is subject to change, but basically there's this runs frequent, and there's a, I got to show you how to use this someday. There's a template.env, which you change to a local env, and then you can kind of put all this stuff in here. But it works really well, and it's actually a lot simpler than stuff I've built in the past. Okay, so anyway, so that change worked. Let's go to Git, and let's say removed table storage of API keys. So that's probably the most meaningful comment I have written. We're going to push that up. Now, if you're somebody that does not know how to use Git and how to do a pull request, basically, you can do changes. You can create your own branch. You can make modifications, and then you can do a pull request and submit that branch to me, and then I would merge that in. It's there's lots of videos on how to do it. Don't do anything without letting me know that you want to do something if you really want to make an enhancement, because if you write something, my expectation is it is going to look like I wrote it. So, I have my way, my style of doing things, and I pretty much want to follow that, at least early on in this project. And I don't even have a license associated with this right now because it's so green, and I really don't know what I'm going to do with it. So at some point, I might just pull it and not share it anymore. I don't know. You can do whatever you want with it at that point, but someday I might just change it and make it private. So, but if you do see something you want to add and you think it's helpful and you want to share it with me, that's fine. You just do that. But point wasn't that. Point was you should know how to use this tool. There are a lot of things you can do with it, a lot of solutions you can implement in the workplace. I've tried to get my workplace to kind of pick it up. Not going to happen. Right now I think we store a lot of our information in a popular Microsoft tool online, and it's horrible to find and horrible to search, and I would rather be using Markdown and have a single repository in a Git repository that we can see and make changes to, and frequently kind of push those changes up. And that would be my preference for most of this stuff, because your documentation has to be easy to modify. So, okay, well, that wasn't a lot of coding, but I think I'm going to end it there. So we'll go back to our not coding screen and call it quits for today. See how that goes. All right, talk to you later.